The story begins with the Demon King screaming in agony after a reality that defied his understanding struck him, driving him into denial. He refused to believe what was happening. He refused to believe that the heroes had defeated him. He refused to believe that the black flames he was so proud of were unable to kill them. The Demon King questioned why the sword god of the heroes was able to pierce his scales and hearts. He could not understand anything, and he kept asking how this could possibly have happened to him. In his memories, he had always been worlds apart from everyone else. He had entered the Demon King Military Academy as the top student and graduated as summa cum laude. The Demon King's standard was a theory established by the first Demon King Emperor, who laid the foundation of the demon realm. He had researched this theory more than anyone else and followed it faithfully. As written in the Demon King's standard, he built a tower and kidnapped princesses. At the same time, he also cultivated the heroes who came to save those princesses. To a Demon King, their anger and sadness were the finest feast one could ever have. Killing them too early was troublesome, and according to the Demon King's standard created by the Demon King Emperor, sincerity was shown by helping the heroes grow before devouring them, because the stronger the hero, the tastier they became. He had followed the Demon King's standard better than anyone else, and because of that, conquering the world had become only a matter of time for him. By absorbing the abundant sadness and anger of heroes and countless civilians, he became the strongest Demon King of all time. And yet now he could do nothing except ask why. At the very end, he was the one who had fallen. When he asked the heroes once more how this had happened, the sword god mockingly replied that all Demon Kings said and asked the same thing. Still, the Demon King could not understand what the sword god meant. The sword god then said that the Demon King had brought this situation upon himself, and questioned why he looked so unable to accept what was happening, something the sword god could not understand. When the Demon King asked what kind of nonsense the sword god was spouting, the sword god replied that the Demon King always kidnapped the most famous princess, and even left clues for the heroes to follow so they could come and stop him, as if he had announced his own move. The sword god asked if the Demon King was stupid, adding that if it were him, he would have eliminated the king instead, plunging the kingdom into chaos. But in the Demon King's mind, kidnapping the human king would cause internal conflict, as those who lusted after the throne would fight amongst themselves, and if that happened, the anger of the heroes and the people would not be directed solely at him. That would prevent him from growing into a true Demon King. Moreover, such an act went against the Demon King's standard. The sword god then said that whenever the heroes did not come directly to the tower, the Demon King would send a decent number of monsters to their villages, effectively helping them train, and he mockingly said that he could not be more grateful for the Demon King's assistance. He added that when they finally reached the tower, everything had become even easier because the first floors were filled with weak monsters, allowing everyone to train at their own level and develop their skills. But in the Demon King's mind, the heroes could not be allowed to die halfway. In order to gather more energy, he had been careful, just as the Demon King's standard he had studied had indicated. When the sword god pulled the sword out of the Demon King's chest, the Demon King let out a scream from the overwhelming pain. As he collapsed, the sword god laughed at him and said that once the tower became boring, there would be nothing left to do but kill the Demon King, so that a new Demon King and a new tower would appear. He then declared that this was the perfect hunting ground for heroes and looked at his companions to see if they agreed. Immediately, the heroes cheered in approval, thanking the Demon King for helping them grow stronger and even saying that he was the best Demon King ever. One of the heroes went so far as to say that he was more like a godfather to them than a Demon King. They continued laughing and thanking him, saying that the tower had given them excellent loot, and praising him for providing them with the best hunting ground imaginable. Lying on the ground, the Demon King could not believe that they called him their godfather, that they treated his tower as nothing more than a hunting ground. The sword god then raised his sword and said that the Demon King had indeed been quite strong, and that many heroes had died this time, but to him that was fine, because it only made him more famous. After saying his final goodbye to the Demon King, the sword god prepared for his final attack. The Demon King, furious, tried to stand. He thought to himself that a mere hero should not be able to humiliate him like this. As his final moment drew closer, he still could not accept that the heroes were humiliating him so completely, and he questioned what the Demon King's standard had ever been good for. He refused to die in vain, and using all of his remaining strength, he roared that he was the Demon King. Just then, his vision slowly went dark as the sword god decapitated him. His face was filled with anger and hatred as he refused to accept his bitter end. As his head rolled across the ground, he saw the hero standing there, showing no concern for him at all. As his consciousness faded, his vision drifted to the ceiling of the throne room, and when his head was thrown into the crowd of heroes, he cursed everyone who looked down on him. Looking at the sword god, he swore revenge for all the humiliation he had suffered. As the sword god stared at the Demon King's head, he told the others not to touch it, saying that the Demon King's horns were his. But suddenly a purple energy erupted from the Demon King's body, and when the sword god noticed it, he could not help but wonder what was happening. The Demon King declared that he would gladly use the last drop of his life in exchange for one final attack. The sword god was stunned by what he was seeing, But before he could react, an immense explosion of purple energy burst from the Demon King's body. Standing nearby, the sword god could do nothing but shout at the top of his lungs, urging his comrades to run, yet the purple energy spread rapidly throughout the area. When the heroes were struck by it, their flesh immediately decayed, leaving nothing but skeletons behind. In his final moments, the Demon King realized that the Demon King's standard had been wrong all along. If only he had known that the heroes had been mocking and belittling him because of it, he would never have followed it in the first place. Before he completely vanished, he swore that if he were ever given a chance to live again, he would never follow the Demon King's standard. As a massive explosion erupted above the tower, he declared that he would throw the Demon King's standard to the orcs instead. But he was startled when he suddenly heard a loud voice calling his name, Berze Deus. Our protagonist then found himself once more in a younger body, standing in a familiar place, unable to understand what was happening. Standing in the middle of a crowd, he questioned what kind of madness this was, until his eyes suddenly widened and beads of sweat rolled down his face as he wondered if he had truly come back to life. A voice again called the name Berze Deus, ordering him to come forward to the stage quickly. As Berze Deus stepped onto the stage, still thinking about what was happening, he glanced around and could hardly believe what he was seeing. A man repeatedly called his name, asking why Berze Deus, someone with such a brilliant mind, was acting so strangely on his graduation day. At that moment, our protagonist realized that the man standing before him was the director. When he noticed the red badge he had received, he remembered that this badge was given to all students who graduated from the Demon King Military Academy, symbolizing a new Demon King. Little by little, he came to realize that this was the very day of his graduation from the Demon King Military Academy, 15 years in the past. Though he did not know why he had returned to the past, one thing was certain: this was a valuable opportunity. When the time came for the fresh graduates to take the oath as new Demon Kings, Berze Deus, the summa cum laude, was called upon to read the Demon King's standard on behalf of everyone. A system-like notification appeared, displaying the principles of the Demon King's standard. As Berze Deus stared at those principles, he thought to himself that he had seen them countless times and had memorized them without missing a single word. These were the principles he had faithfully followed his entire life, the very garbage that had led him to his death and turned him into a mere toy for the heroes. Now he was expected to read them aloud and swear before everyone that he would follow them all his life. However, he could not contain the rage he felt from the humiliation he had suffered because of those very principles. Once again, the announcer called his name, asking him to read the Demon King's standard out loud. But Berze Deus only gritted his teeth in fury and declared that he could not swear such an oath or read the Demon King's standard. His fellow students stared at him in shock. Then he screamed that he could not take such a stupid oath, because following the principles of the Demon King's standard was foolish and insane. He shouted at the top of his lungs that the Demon King's standard and its principles were nothing but garbage. The students, teachers, and even the directors of the academy were left speechless in shock, followed by waves of anger and disbelief throughout the hall. Berze Deus, the top graduate in the history of the Demon King Military Academy, was about to become its greatest disgrace. One demon slammed his fist onto the table in intense fury. This demon was the Archduke of the Demon Realm, Arcane Blameth. With eyes glowing in rage, he told Berze Deus that he could execute him on the spot for daring to insult the Demon King's standard and its principles. However, considering Berze Deus's exemplary conduct and exceptional talent, Arcane Blameth granted him one final chance to withdraw his reckless statement and apologize to the entire Demon Realm. If he refused, he would be assigned and deployed to Arcane. According to the demons, Arcane was a dimension to which Demon Kings were sent to die by the dozens. It was, in essence, a death sentence for Berze Deus. Others questioned why the Archduke would even give such a criminal a chance, believing that by insulting the Demon King's standard, Berze Deus deserved immediate execution, and that an apology was far from enough. Arcane Blameth replied that Berze Deus should know better than anyone what Arcane was, for it was the worst domain where countless Demon Kings had lost their lives. But to everyone's astonishment, Berze Deus met the Archduke's gaze and firmly told him to send him there. He declared that he was willing to go to Aran to prove that the Demon King's standards and principles were nothing but garbage. Because of this, the Archduke grew even angrier and said that he was truly hopeless. Then the Archduke used a massive magic circle to immediately send Berze Deus to Aran. Before he completely vanished, the Archduke declared that Berze Deus would receive no privileges normally granted to a top Demon King, that no demons would accompany him, and that until he completed his conquest, he was forbidden to return to the Demon Realm. While falling from the sky, everything that was happening was exactly what he had expected after the mess he had caused. Yet he still could not believe that he was being sent back to Aran, the very place where the heroes had humiliated him before ending his life. In Berze Deus's mind, even before his regression, he had personally chosen Aran, because he believed that someone as strong as him could conquer a realm that had cost countless Demon Kings their lives and yet remained unconquered. His arrogance in his past life had cost him everything, because too many heroes had been exploiting the Demon King's standards. A powerful explosion erupted at the peak of a mountain covered in ice, as he crash-landed with his demonic wings and horns in the northern continent of the Regressed Mountains. And before he even stood up, he swore that what happened in his past life would never happen again, because this time, he would be the one to exploit the heroes. In other words, he would exploit the heroes' standards. Not long after, a man with long hair was seen shaving his beard, and after fastening the buttons of his clothes, it was revealed that this man was the new summa cum laude of the Demon Academy, Gordon Dyrek. In Gordon's mind, if the Demon King Academy trained demon kings, then the Demon Academy trained the demons who served them, and according to Demon Realm regulations, the summa cum laude of the Demon Academy was meant to serve the top demon king. The one who placed second said that Gordon was lucky to graduate as the top demon, because that meant he would now be able to serve the top demon king, Lord Berzadeus, while the one who placed third was filled with regret, thinking that if only he had worked harder, he should have been the one given the chance to serve Berzadeus. Smiling, Gordon said that all demon kings were great, but in his mind, none of them were as great as Lord Berzadeus, who came from the lineage of the demonic dragons, a once-in-a-millennium prodigy who would be remembered forever in the history of the demon realm. To Gordon, graduating in the same year as Berzadeus was an enormous blessing, and with Lord Berzadeus, he believed they could conquer any dimension and raise a grand statue of the greatest demon king and his lieutenant, convinced that his name would also be engraved in the glorious pages of demon realm history. However, after the declaration Berzadeus made, his dreams began to crumble, and when he heard Berza shout that the Demon King's standards were garbage, he froze like a living statue, his glasses shattering into pieces, his jaw dropping, and his eyes widening in disbelief. At that very moment, in the deep region of the Regressed Mountains in the northern continent, due to the regulations of the demon realm, Gordon, as the top graduate, was also sent to Arene to serve the top demon king. Still frozen in shock and asking why he had been sent to Arene, he suddenly heard Berzadeus's voice, saying that according to Archduke Arcane, no demons were supposed to accompany him, yet they had sent one after all. When Gordon turned around, Berza said that it was good to see him while stretching out his hand toward him, but Gordon could only ask why Berza would do something like that. Berza immediately asked what he was talking about, and Gordon nearly lost his mind as he shouted about what Berza had done and said regarding the Demon King's standards, how he had called their principles garbage in front of everyone, and why out of all places they had been sent to Arene. Gordon said that now he would surely die without ever achieving his dreams. Berza simply told him to calm down, or he would end up pulling out all his own hair, but Gordon, filled with anger, said that his hair was not the issue right now. In Berzadeus's mind, he wondered if Gordon had always been like this, because before his regression, he had known him as someone confident and composed. He then remembered the things Gordon had said in his past life, that he knew this journey would be difficult, but if they worked together, nothing would be impossible, and that if they had not ended up in Achan, he probably would not have felt any motivation at all. Berza thought it was understandable, since the situation was vastly different now, and if he ever told Gordon about his regression, Gordon would probably think he was completely insane. After some time, Gordon asked Berza to forgive his shameful outburst, and said that since it had come to this, he would still do his best to fulfill his duty. According to Demon King's Standard Rule Number 1, the Demon King must build a tower, but it could not be hidden or placed in an excessively harsh environment, because only then would heroes be able to find it. According to Gordon, their current location was extremely dangerous and surrounded by massive mountains, making it very difficult for human heroes to find or reach the tower, and with powerful monsters roaming everywhere, they could not build the tower here, and should move to a different place. Gordon was shocked beyond belief when Berza dropped a red object onto the ground, and said that he would build the tower right there, on that very spot. The object was called a tower seed, and in order for a tower to grow, the seed had to be planted in the ground, and fed with the Demon King's blood. Because of this, Gordon said that Berza was going directly against the Demon King's standards, but Berza replied that he had never sworn any oath to follow them, which was why Gordon asked if he was now throwing away even the pride of a Demon King. In Berza's mind, he understood Gordon's disgust, because for a demon, it was hard to deny a faith that had been carved deep into their bones. Unless a demon died or experienced something as drastic as death, they could not reject it, just as he himself had been unable to reject it in his past life. Then Berza cut his palm, and as he let his blood drip onto the tower seed, he told Gordon to listen carefully, once again stating that the Demon King's standards were garbage, especially here in the realm of Arene. Suddenly the entire area shook along with the mountains in the distance, and after the tower seed released a powerful red light, it began to spin rapidly before them. A massive red circle appeared, followed by a notification identifying the user of the tower, and moments later, the tower identified its user as someone from the Black Flame Demonic Dragon tribe, our protagonist, Berzadeus. After the identification process, a demon tower slowly emerged from beneath the ground, and Berza explained that because Arene was swarming with an overwhelming number of heroes, that was the very reason all demon kings who came here ended up dying. He added that humans had realized, after destroying countless towers, that towers had a certain mechanism, and they had begun using the Demon King's standards against the demons themselves. Burza said that in this land, the Demon King's standards no longer applied, and what truly worked here should be called the hero's standards. When Gordon asked what the hero's standards were, Burza remained silent, simply staring up at the towering demon tower before them. As he looked up, Gordon thought that in the end, Burza really had built the tower in this place. While Burza then invited Gordon to head inside, he named the structure the Burza Tower. Meanwhile, on the first floor of the Burza Tower, Gordon thought that a normal tower should have a complex structure, or be filled with monsters, but there was nothing at all. In his mind, this tower had no perks, a tower fit for a Demon King with no privileges. On the fifth floor of the Burza Tower was the Demon King's chamber, and as they walked toward it, Gordon thought that every single floor was completely empty. However, since Burza had already built the tower, they could not undo it anymore, and he believed that at the very least, they should follow Demon King's standard rule number 2. According to that rule, the Demon King must kidnap a prince or a princess, preferably one who was close to the throne of a human kingdom, because such a person would yield more demonic energy. Gordon then asked Demon King Burza to allow him to give some advice, and when Burza agreed, he said that the closest kingdom to the Regressed Mountains was the kingdom of Corzin, and he begged Burza to kidnap the princess with the highest rank in the line of succession, so that he could absorb the kingdom's rage and sorrow, and grow his power as quickly as possible. Gordon said that he knew Burza would probably refuse, but before he could even finish his words, Burza agreed. When Gordon asked if he had heard that right, Burza simply said that there was already a princess he had his eye on. Gordon immediately said that he would help, but Burza told him that he had to stay and guard the tower, because the Demon King's residence must never be left empty. In Gordon's mind, he felt relieved, thinking that Burza truly was the top Demon King after all. He also thought that Burza must have just been under extreme stress because of the graduation ceremony, and that everything was still salvageable, and that this was where it all truly began. As Burza climbed out through the window, Gordon asked who he was planning to kidnap. After leaping into the air, Burza replied that he was going to the country farthest from the tower, the southernmost nation on the continent, the kingdom of Hilderin. Only moments later, a princess spotted Burza flying through the sky. According to Burza, this princess was the one with the least presence, the 13th princess of the kingdom of Hilderin, and he immediately declared that he had come to take her away. At that moment, Gordon completely lost his mind, because what Burza had just done was the exact opposite of Demon King's standard rule number 2. After several moments of silent staring between the two, the princess asked who our protagonist was, and Burza immediately said that he was the Demon King who had come to kidnap her. But after hearing this, the princess slightly smiled and asked Burza if he was sure he could handle her. Burza was slightly surprised by the princess's strange question, and immediately asked himself if she thought Demon Kings were a joke. He then said that he was sure he could handle the princess, because he was a Demon King. After hearing Burza's answer, the princess immediately reached out both of her hands to him and said that, if that was the case, she would allow the Demon King to take her. Once again, her strange behavior puzzled Burza. He pointed out that her unnatural calmness was odd, and he immediately asked her if she was planning something bad against him. But the princess only said that she had always thought that something like this might happen one day, since she was born a princess. Burza replied that if she was hoping he would let his guard down, then she should give up already, because he was quite desperate and not about to be tricked by her. The princess insisted that she was not plotting anything and asked how she was even supposed to set up a trap, knowing in advance that a Demon King might come here today. Burza immediately thought that she had a point, but he still couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling in his chest. The princess then reached out her hand to him again, and asked if they were allowed to leave now. Just a few moments later, Burza could already be seen flying back toward his Burzo Tower in the Regressed Mountains while carrying the princess of the Hilderin Kingdom. When they entered the tower, with Burza still holding the princess in his arms, Gordon immediately came to meet them. After Burza gently put the princess down, he ordered Gordon to allow her to stay on the 4th floor of the tower. Gordon immediately asked if the princess should not be placed in their prison instead, but Burza said that the princess had followed him of her own will, so he was willing to offer her a certain degree of leniency. Gordon said that he understood the Demon King's command, and then added that he had something he wanted to tell Demon King Burza. Meanwhile, after the 13th princess had been brought to the 4th floor of the Burza Tower and sat down, she noticed how hard and cold the floor was, and it finally dawned on her that she had truly been kidnapped. There was nothing else she could see in this place. No cushions, no baskets, no servants, and aside from the absence of a beautiful garden, it was nothing compared to their Hilderin Kingdom. Even so, a faint smile still appeared on her face as she thought that this place was not so bad. Shortly after, Burza asked Gordon if they had really received an invitation from the Tower of Beasts, which Gordon immediately confirmed. According to the invitation, it was supposed to be a welcome party for the newly appointed Demon King Burza. However, in Burza's opinion, it was not a welcome party at all, but probably just a pathetic attempt to haze the newcomer and throw their weight around him. In his mind, Demon Kings were fundamentally too proud to join hands with anyone else, but an unprecedented factor had forced them to go against their pride and work together. In his previous life, he had ignored them because he thought they were just weak-minded, but this time he believed he should at least try to exchange a few words with them. When he arrived at the Tower of Beasts, Burzay found himself facing Draxon, the Demon King of Beasts. After Draxon introduced himself, he stated that he had been ruling this place for 70 years. He then asked Burzay if he really was the new Demon King, saying that he had heard Burzay had mocked the traditional way, and that in his eyes Burzay looked pretty unimpressive. In Burzay's mind he had already expected that the attitudes of the Demon Kings would be like this, and he even thought that perhaps he should not have come here at all. He then asked Draxon if he was trying to pick a fight, and told him to just state his business. Draxon leaned over him while laughing and said that Burzay knew nothing. He added that Archduke Arcane had told him to watch over Burzay once he arrived in Arion. Burzay asked if he was referring to that noisy old vampire geezer, thinking that it seemed Archduke Arcane was still not satisfied after sending him to Arion. Draxon angrily demanded how Burzay dared to address the Archduke in such a manner, and said that Burzay really had some nerve. He then dropped his food in front of Burzay and ordered him to use his mouth to pick it up and lick it, saying that he would pardon Burzay's impudence if he did. Burzay, however, remained silent. After a moment, Burzay asked if the Demon King of Beasts truly did not know the real reason he had been sent to Arion. Draxon replied that he did know, then called Burzay insane, and said it was because Burzay had mocked the orthodox ways of the Demon Kings. Burzay responded that according to that same orthodox doctrine, Demon Kings were not allowed to kill one another. He then stomped on Draxon's food, released his aura, and as his eyes glowed, he asked Draxon if he really thought he would follow the so-called Demon King standards. At that moment, beads of sweat rolled down Draxon's face as he felt an overwhelming pressure and fear, and he could not help but wonder what kind of aura Burzay was releasing. Stuttering, he said that Archduke Arcane had ordered him to see if Burzay had properly kidnapped a princess. He added that if Burzay did not report back within a month, he would lose all of his authority, but before he could even finish his words, Burzay had already turned and walked away, saying that he had been wondering what Draxon was going to say, and that he had already kidnapped a princess, adding that the princess he chose suited his taste. After returning to the tower, Gordon said that Burzay had excellently demonstrated the majesty of a Demon King, but Burzay replied that it was nothing special, and that for now he was sure Draxon would not be able to do anything more. Still, they needed to be prepared, so he told Gordon to go and check on the princess's condition, because he needed to know how he could make use of her. After Gordon left, Burzay thought that the situation was troublesome, because if the stance and attitude of the other Demon Kings were really like what he had experienced so far, things would become quite bothersome for him. He had not expected that the consequences of mocking the orthodox ways would be far greater than he had anticipated. Still, even if he were given another chance, he was certain he would make the same choice, because he would rather die than bow his head to something he considered garbage. He then checked his status, thinking that he would not repeat the same mistake again, and that this time he would rebuild his foundation from scratch. Since he had kidnapped a princess of the lowest rank, he was sure he would only gain a few hundred demonic energy points from the negative emotions of humans, but for him, it was the safest plan. However, when he saw that his system showed more than 13,000 demonic energy points, he was completely shocked, and he immediately asked himself how he could have obtained that many points. At that moment, he received a system notification stating that he had received a video recording from the Tower of Beasts. In the video, Draxon addressed the new Demon King, Burza, and said that he had sent this recording to congratulate him. Draxon added that although their first meeting had unfortunately not gone well, he should at least give Burza this much as his senior, because what Burza had achieved in Arene was by no means an easy feat. He also said that he was truly impressed with Burza, and asked if mocking the orthodox way had simply been a cover. Burza, however, could not understand what Draxon was talking about. His face darkened as sweat dripped down his skin, and he thought that something was wrong. At that moment, Gordon came running, calling out to the Demon King and saying that there was a problem on the 4th floor of the tower. When they went to the 4th floor, Burza was greeted by a beautiful and peaceful sight, a place filled with blooming flowers and butterflies flying everywhere. He immediately asked what had happened to this place. According to the system, the current status of the 4th floor of the Burza Tower was naturalization in progress. When the princess noticed Burza, she said, "So you're here," while Burza could not believe that the princess had created an entire ecosystem inside a magic tower. In his mind, this was a feat that could only be accomplished by someone who had mastered the 4 elements, and only one spiritist on the continent was capable of such a thing. He then said that he had clearly gone to the castle of the 13th princess, and immediately stated that the girl standing before him was not the 13th princess. With a gentle smile, the girl said that, as expected, the Demon King had mistaken her for Elena, the 13th princess of the Hilderin Kingdom. Hearing this, sweat rolled down Burza's face as he, still in shock, asked if what he was thinking was true. The girl immediately confirmed it, and with a smile, she introduced herself as Ernan Hilderin, the first princess of the Hilderin Kingdom. Meanwhile, chaos erupted throughout the Hilderin Kingdom when they discovered that their first princess had been kidnapped by a Demon King. The king was furious, as he demanded to know which Demon King had dared to kidnap his dearest daughter, Ernan. He immediately ordered that all of their strongest heroes, and the entire military of the kingdom, be assembled at once, because he wanted the head of the foolish demon king who had taken his daughter, and he commanded them to bring his princess back at all costs. With a smile, Ernan said to Berzi that this was exactly why she had asked him if he could handle her before voluntarily coming with him. Berzi replied that he had heard there was a genius elemental mage overflowing with mana, yet there was no way he could not have sensed her presence, and he asked how she had fooled him. While looking at the glowing ring on her finger, Ernan explained that she could hide her mana with the help of this ring. According to her, it was an heirloom passed down through the royal family. She immediately asked if that answered Berzi's question and whether he now wanted to send her back to the Hilderan kingdom. Berzi remained silent. In his mind, he knew he would be mocked if he sent the princess back, and no kingdom would ever fear a cowardly demon king. If that happened, it would also become far more difficult for him to collect demonic energy. So he decided to see this through, until he suddenly received a system notification stating that rage directed toward Demon King Berzi Deus had been detected, and that he now had a total of 19,521 demonic energy points. In Berzi's mind, the Hilderan kingdom already knew that he was the one who had kidnapped the princess, and so he told Ernan that nothing would change even if she was not the 13th princess, because she would remain his hostage. Meanwhile, in the main castle of the Hilderan kingdom, the king furiously ordered all of his followers to kill the foolish demon king and bring his princess back. However, one man pointed out that they did not actually know which demon king had kidnapped her. He added that they had already sent out patrols and begged the king to wait, but before he could finish speaking, the king shouted that they had to hurry and figure it out. The king also said that the princess had been kidnapped, yet everyone else was doing nothing. Then another man spoke up and said that something felt off. When the king asked what he meant, the man explained that the demon king of lust had recently kidnapped another nation's princess, which had brought the wrath of many upon him, and that he had ultimately been killed by heroes. Despite that example, another demon king had now appeared to kidnap their princess, and he questioned how that was not strange. Realization struck everyone, and as the king tightened his grip on his chair, he declared that the one who had kidnapped their princess must be a new demon king. Suddenly, a soldier rushed into the chamber with news. He reported that they had found traces of teleportation magic, heading north, with the destination presumed to be the Regressed Mountains. Upon hearing the words Regressed Mountains, the king's eyes widened in shock. Meanwhile, in the Regressed Mountains at Burza's tower, Gordon addressed Burza as the Demon King, and warned him that soldiers from Hilderan would surely arrive at their tower at any moment. He asked if that was not too much for Burza to handle. Burza, however, smiled confidently and said it was fine, because the Hilderan kingdom would not be able to reach their tower. According to him, the Regressed Mountains lay at the very edge of the northern tip of the continent, while the Hilderan kingdom was in the far south. There was no way that all the nations in between would simply allow the Hilderan army to pass through. He added that there was no chance every nation would open a path for them, so they would be forced to employ the Hero Guild instead. Back in Hilderan, the king admitted that they had no other choice and instructed his men to contact the Hero Guild. Sometime later at the Hero Guild, everyone was talking about how the princess of the Hilderan kingdom had been kidnapped, and others wondered what kind of insane demon king would dare do such a thing. When they learned that the tower was located in the Regressed Mountains, some said that the place was filled with hellish monsters, and other heroes stated that they had not become heroes just to die. One of them even remarked that the king of Hilderan was going to suffer this time. Burzil told Gordon that the Hero Guild would not move, because those people only cared about money. They would never want to go somewhere that dangerous, and that was one of the reasons he had built his tower there. Gordon could hardly believe that Burzil had even considered the location. He also thought that Burzil truly did not follow the rules, yet felt that he was extremely knowledgeable about Achan, as if he had already been there before. The scene then shifted back to the king, who in a fit of rage, demanded to know if there truly was no hero willing to step up for the mission. He questioned how they could call themselves heroes at all. Then it dawned on him that although there were countless heroes in Achan, they only cared about profit, making them very selective with the jobs they accepted. Meanwhile, Burze checked his system and thought that it would take time before a proper group was formed, and even more time for them to actually arrive. Even so, he did not have enough demonic energy points to deal with an entire army of heroes, and he knew all too well the fear of facing countless enemies. He then told Gordon to contact Draxon, because he intended to sell demonic energy. Gordon immediately agreed, but then suddenly realized what Burze had just said. He asked if the Demon King was truly going to sell his demonic energy. He could not believe what he was hearing, and explained that demonic energy was the currency of dreams, because it allowed a Demon King to transcend the limits of their species. It also enabled them to unlock the tower's features and summon monsters. He asked why Demon King Burze would want to exchange something so valuable for human money. Burze only replied that he was certain Draxon would pay a massive sum for it, and since he could not stop the heroes with the amount of demonic energy he currently had, he had no choice but to rely on human money instead, because human money could allow him to do something that demonic energy could not. In the next scene, we see the Hulton work near the Regressed Mountains fortress city. As soldiers spoke amongst themselves at the gate, they noticed the arrival of a cloaked man. When they asked who he was, he introduced himself as a mercenary. The soldiers questioned what kind of mercenary would head alone toward the Regressed mountains, and said his presence was suspicious. However, they suddenly fell silent when the cloaked man handed them a gold coin, and they immediately let him pass. After removing his cloak, it was revealed that this was our protagonist, Berze. As the soldiers discussed how they would divide the gold coin, Berze thought to himself that he could not explore this city on his own, and that he needed to find a guide first. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild, one mercenary asked their captain if they should not leave the area soon, but the captain replied that it was nice there, since the soldiers handled the monsters and all they had to do was collect the spoils. He asked his subordinate what place could possibly be better than that. Then one member asked if they had not heard the news that a new demon king had set up a tower in the Regressed mountains. The captain dismissed it as fake news, saying that they clearly did not understand demon kings, because demon kings always established their towers where heroes could easily reach them. Another mercenary said he had heard that the new demon king had even kidnapped the princess of the Hilderan kingdom. The captain sighed in annoyance and asked if his subordinate had ever seen a demon king travel to the opposite end of the continent just to kidnap a princess. Someone else added that the Hero Guild had turned down the job of rescuing the princess after learning the tower's location, but the captain said it was only for show. He explained that a princess was a precious heir, so they were only trying to squeeze more money out of the situation. He added that they should have already known how insane heroes were when it came to money. At that moment, everyone, including our main character, who had suddenly appeared behind the captain, heard him say this. With a menacing look, Berze remarked that now he understood what was really going on. The captain nearly jumped out of his skin, saying that Berze had scared him and demanded to know who he was. Berze simply said that they seemed quite knowledgeable, and that only one of them needed to stay behind while the rest could leave. A drunken mercenary then drew his weapon, and declared that since Berze had infiltrated their headquarters, he would not leave alive. In an instant, each of them received a single attack from Berze, and several members of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild collapsed one after another. A bald mercenary then launched an attack with his massive hammer toward our protagonist, but Berze caught the blow with one hand, filling the attacker with shock and terror. The others prepared to fire their crossbows, but after Berze punched the bald mercenary, he was sent flying straight into the wall. The captain instantly sobered up, and with no choice but to hide in fear, he could only think that our protagonist was a monster. After giving them a terrifying smile, a series of heavy thuds echoed from inside the Scarlet Hawk headquarters. Hearing this, some people outside assumed the mercenaries were just fighting among themselves again, while others wondered if they were not tired of their constant infighting. After a while, every member of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild lay defeated, and only the captain remained standing before our protagonist. Seeing his reaction, Berze told him that there was no need to be afraid, because he would spare his life if he answered all of his questions. The captain immediately bowed and begged to be spared. When Berze asked where the slave market was, the captain swiftly guided him to the place where slaves were being held. As they walked, Berze noticed that only human slaves were present. The captain asked if humans were not to Berze's liking, but Berze simply tossed him a bag of gold and asked if there were no rare slaves in the area. The captain's expression changed instantly at the sight of the gold coins, and with a grin he said he would take Berze to where the rare slaves were kept. As they continued walking, Berze could not stop wondering how the guild captain could make such an expression after seeing his subordinates brutally defeated, and he thought that humans who desired money and demons who desired demonic energy were not very different after all. After they descended a staircase and reached their destination, Berze remembered Gordon's question about what he planned to do with human money. He had said that with human money he could purchase slaves, and the ones he intended to buy were the otherworldly species captured by humans. In Berze's mind, an elf, known for its incorruptible integrity, would be the best choice, and he planned to use this slave as a spy to sow chaos among the heroes. Meanwhile, back in the Hilderan kingdom, a hero known as Hillen Cargill had arrived. The king immediately asked if he had come to accept the mission of rescuing their first princess. Hillen confirmed his intentions, and declared that he would make sure to save the princess and bring back the Demon King's head to the king in the name of justice. Meanwhile, in Berze's mind, he knew that using an elf as a spy would be effective, since these beings were known for their innocence. When the slave overseer arrived, he immediately asked Berze what kind of slave he was looking for, and Berze quickly said that he had come to buy the elven slave. The mercenary captain was also extremely shocked when Berze stated that he would be the one to pay. Because of the captain's reaction, Berze's expression darkened as he asked if he had any objections, and out of fear, the mercenary captain had no choice but to hand over the sack of gold coins, saying that he was not complaining and that it was only natural for him to pay for the slave Berze wanted. Then Berze said that he needed to confirm something, and asked the two of them to leave the room, and when the old man said that the elf might go berserk, Berze simply said that it was fine, because if anything happened while they were gone, the captain of the mercenary guild would pay for it. After they left, Berze immediately approached the elven slave, and said that it was sad to see an ever-so-noble elf reduced to a miserable slave, and as he spoke, he used his ability to remove the elf's gag. Because of this, the elf immediately asked if Burza was a demon, and also questioned what business a demon could possibly have with an elf. Burza replied that he wanted to give the elf a chance to take revenge on humans. The elf said that Burza's offer was tempting, but that he could not trust demons any more than he trusted humans. Burza then said that he was different, and that if the elf remained loyal to him for exactly 50 years, he would guarantee the elf's safety and freedom. He also added that 50 years was nothing for an elf, and that this was far better than being humiliated by humans like this. However, the elf said that Burza was still a demon, and that his kind was trying to destroy the world tree that elves served together with this world, the same world tree that sustained everything, and he asked how he was supposed to trust him. The elf also pointed out that it was strange for a demon to seek the help of an elf, and in Burza's mind, the elf was hitting him exactly where it hurt. Left with no other choice, Burza took a vow on the great demon king's standard that he would fulfill his promise and not lay a hand on the world tree. The elf immediately froze in shock, knowing that to a demon, the demon king's standard was the same as the world tree was to elves. When Burza said that in return he wanted the elf to take his own vow on the world tree, pledging allegiance to him for 50 years, the elf called him a strange one and said that if he was going that far, he had no choice but to accept. The elf then introduced himself as Granada from the Maple tribe, and said he would make his vow once he saw the Demon King who had supposedly sent Burza here. Burza simply smiled and said that he was the Demon King, causing the elf to slightly stagger in shock as he asked if what Burza was saying was true. Unable to hold it back any longer, Granada burst into laughter and told Burza not to joke like that. He then asked why a Demon King would ever come to a place like this, and added that Demon Kings grew weaker the farther they were from their towers, so why would one personally travel all this way just to buy a slave? Still laughing, Granada declared that if Burza truly was the Demon King, then he would pledge his allegiance not for 50 years, but for the next 100 years instead. After they returned to the 5th floor of Burza's tower, and after Burza sat down on his throne, the elf was left speechless. Then he spoke, saying that they would indeed have a 100-year contract, because those were Granada's own words, not Burza's, even though he still could not believe that Burza was really the Demon King. He then said that this had to be a scam, because Burza had never told him that the tower would be this empty. According to Granada, there was literally nothing up to the 3rd floor, and the 4th floor only contained nature. He asked what kind of sloppy tower did not even have a single monster. He also said that at this rate Burza would not even last a year before the heroes tore him apart, so there was no way he could work in a place like this. But suddenly Burza released his terrifying purple aura and asked Granada if he had already forgotten their contract, causing Granada to immediately fall silent. In his mind, the pressure he felt from Burza's raw demonic power was overwhelming, and this confirmed that Burza truly was a Demon King. He also thought that while Burza's tower might look sloppy, not a single monster from the Regressed mountains had attacked them, even though those were disaster-level creatures, and he realized that the monsters probably did not dare to risk provoking a Demon King. To Granada, a Demon King was still a Demon King, and perhaps he really would be able to take his revenge with Burza's help. He then knelt and swore on the name of the World Tree that from that moment on, his loyalty to Burza would last for the next 100 years. After taking his vow, he thought that since the Demon King himself had come to get him, he would surely be given an important role, and that he would achieve his vengeance as part of some great evil plan. But the very first mission Burza gave him was to prepare a meal, leaving him in complete shock and disbelief. While cooking, Granada thought that he was supposed to be part of something far more important, but then Ernan suddenly came to help and asked if she could make some vegetable bread. A short while later, on the 5th floor of Burza's tower in the dining room, as they sat facing each other and ate at the table, Granada asked if the woman with them was the princess of the Hilderan kingdom, and when Burza confirmed it and said that she was indeed Ernan Hilderan, Granada was utterly shocked. He immediately asked if the Demon King had lost his mind for kidnapping the crown princess of Hilderan, and he also pointed out that this tower had nothing, asking how Burza planned to stop the heroes when they arrived. Burza simply replied that that was the very reason he had bought Granada, and told him to just sit and eat for now. When Burza praised how delicious the food was, Ernan added that she had helped with the cooking as well, while Granada could only sit there, unable to understand what was happening to the world anymore. Meanwhile, in the next scene, still inside Burza's tower on the 4th floor, Granada asked the Demon King if he wanted him to fight the heroes in that place, but Burza said no, because if the heroes had managed to come that far, then it would already be game over for them, since that meant they had crossed the Regressed mountains. Burza then said that Granada would instead be disrupting the human world in his place, and when Granada asked if he meant he would be a spy, Burza immediately confirmed it, and said that before that he needed to check Granada's skills. Granada then asked how he was supposed to beat a Demon King inside his own tower, but Burza replied that he would use only one hand and would not use his demonic energy, and that if Granada won, he was even willing to reduce their contract by 50 years. Upon hearing this, Granada immediately released his aura, and said that the Demon King had better keep his word, because he was about to blow his head off, or in other words, he would attack him with everything he had. In an instant, the two of them vanished from where they stood, and Granada launched a relentless series of attacks, while Burza simply defended against each one. As he continued to block every strike, Burza commented that even though Granada must have spent a long time as a slave, his movements were still sharp, and asked if he had absorbed the mana on the 4th floor or strengthened his physical body, saying that it was a fitting style for an elf. Granada replied that an average elf could never do what he was doing, and that the Demon King had only himself to blame for choosing the wrong opponent in the wrong place. He then used his ability to bind Burza's feet to the ground. As Granada prepared to unleash his strongest attack, confident that he could reduce their contract to 50 years, Burza suddenly smiled like a true demon, and said that this should be enough. After releasing a counterattack, Burza said that he hoped Granada had not forgotten who his real opponent was, and with a smirk, added that he did not need to worry, because he was not trying to use his demonic energy, and would make sure to control his strength so that he did not kill him. Sweat poured down Granada's face, and before he could even finish speaking, a series of powerful crashing sounds echoed throughout Burza's tower. In the next scene, back at Horton Walk inside the headquarters of the Scarlet Mercenary Guild, the captain smiled with eyes that gleamed like gold coins, and said that it was an honor to see Burza again. When Burza said that he wanted to hire their group for an entire year, the captain immediately asked what Burza's budget was. The members of the Scarlet Mercenaries then began whispering among themselves, saying that even though their captain already had plenty of money, he was still bowing down to the one who had beaten them half to death, and some of them even wondered if they needed to look for a new job. But when Burza pulled out a sack of gold coins and said that it was his deposit for them, the reaction of the mercenaries instantly changed, and they declared that they would follow their captain for the rest of their lives, while the captain himself wondered if he should just find a new squad altogether. Burza then said that they should also include his man in their team, because that man would be delivering his orders from now on. The captain quickly agreed, but some of the guild members hesitated, saying that having a stranger in their team was a bit before they could finish. Granada greeted them and introduced himself. When they saw his face covered in bruises and swollen bumps, their expressions immediately changed, and they accepted Granada as part of their group. In Burza's mind, they might have looked mediocre, but they were mercenaries who operated in the Regressed region, and he could not find seasoned mercenaries like them anywhere else, not to mention they were easy to control. He also thought that the only hero who would answer the Hilderan Kingdom's call at this time of the year was Hillen Cargill, the hero who had defeated the Demon King of Lust. Burza then named them the Red Hawk Mercenaries, and said that their first mission was to investigate Hillen Cargill, the hero hired by the Hilderan Kingdom. In the next scene inside Burza's tower, Burza said that now that he had left the matter of the heroes to Granada, it was his turn to become stronger. He explained that demonic energy points could be used either to enhance the tower or to strengthen the Demon King himself, but since he had already sold his demonic energy points to Draxon, the only way for him to grow stronger now was through the Spirit Blossom, a crystal of mana that sprouts after absorbing the energy of nature, and once consumed, it grants an immense boost in strength. Here in the Regressed Mountains, with the harsh mana storms and powerful monsters, nature had been almost untouched by humanity, and as a result Spirit Blossoms had spent long years naturally absorbing pure mana, making their energy even more refined. Truly, the area was a treasure trove of Spirit Blossoms, but for demons, they were still less effective than demonic energy. However, in Burza's situation, they were better than nothing. He then told Gordon that he was going to search for some Spirit Blossoms. Gordon immediately said that it was risky to go without proper preparations, because it was like trying to find a needle in a desert, and added that monsters were no different from beasts and would surely attack Burza the moment they saw an opening. Burza replied that he could deal with monsters easily, but finding the Spirit Blossoms would indeed be as difficult as Gordon had said, and when Gordon added that it would be almost impossible unless he had an excellent mana detector, someone suddenly knocked on their door. As Ernan peeked through one of the openings while the door was being opened, she asked if they were busy, and in that moment both Gordon and Burza realized that Ernan herself was the solution to their problem. A short while later, Burza was seen leaving the tower together with Ernan, and Ernan said that she was so excited because she had been feeling bored inside the tower lately. She also reminded Burza that he needed to keep his promise to let her decorate the 4th floor however she wanted. Burza agreed, saying that as long as she helped him find the Spirit Blossom, she could do whatever she wanted on the 4th floor, though in his mind he thought that she had already decorated it to her liking, and he could not help but wonder how far she was really planning to take it, because the fact that she had even thought of decorating a Demon King's tower was already insane. In Ernan's mind, however, she never expected that she would ever be able to leave the tower again, and she thought that it was a good thing that he had come to check on them. She was slightly startled when Burza suddenly grabbed her by the shoulder and lifted her up, telling her that she needed to hold on tightly, while the princess said for him to wait because she was not ready yet. But the moment Burza spread his wings, he immediately flew up into the sky with her in his arms, leaving her with no choice but to scream. As they flew, Princess Ernan slowly opened her eyes until she could no longer believe what she was seeing. She said that she had not noticed it on the day she was kidnapped because it was dark, but the world was just so vast. In her memory, every day had been nothing but repetition. magic training, studying rulership, more training, more studying, again and again, and she believed she would continue living that way until the day she died. Smiling, Ernan asked the Demon King if he knew the only person who had ever flown over the Regressed mountains, joking that it was probably her now, but Burzy said that he did not care, and began telling her what she needed to do. Before he could finish, Ernan told him that he could call her by her name, Ernan, since they would be seeing each other for quite some time, and that it would be better that way. Burzy remained silent, thinking that maybe he had let the princess get her way a little too much. As they continued flying, Ernan held tightly onto him, and Burzy warned her that she seemed to keep forgetting her place, and asked if she wanted to be moved to the underground prison instead. She immediately begged for forgiveness, and then Burzy told her to use her spirits to find the spirit blossoms. Ernan immediately summoned her spirits as he commanded to search for the spirit blossoms. In Burzy's mind, he thought that they probably would not find any very quickly, but he was certain that her spirits would still be faster than Gordon or himself. Before he even finished that thought, Ernan's spirits returned and told her that they had already found what Burzy was looking for, shocking him greatly. However, when they reached the spirit blossom, they saw that it was surrounded by a group of monsters who had arrived there before them. Seeing this, Burzy decided to use his authority as the Demon King, and declared that monsters were descendants of demons who had left the demon realm, and if they still had any honor left as demons, they should obey his order as their king to leave the spirit blossom alone and get out of his sight. The monsters, however, refused to acknowledge his authority. They said that they would not listen to the words of a demon, and that since they hated him, he deserved to die. This greatly annoyed Burzy, and as he let out a light laugh, he admitted to himself that Gordon had been right, expecting beasts to think was foolish of him. Because of this, Burzy decided to use his power, releasing his purple flames and declaring that he would simply burn them all to ashes. The monsters immediately charged as they shouted that they needed to protect what was theirs, and that they would kill and eat the Demon King. In the next instant, Burzy's purple fire transformed into the shape of a dragon that surged forward and burned through their bodies, leaving them screaming in agony. As other monsters tried to rush toward Ernan, Burzy once again used his power to strike down those heading for her. For a moment, Ernan could only fall silent, thinking that orcs were known to take down even ogres when working together, yet they could not even come close to her because of the Demon King's presence. As Burzy continued to slaughter the monsters, Princess Ernan could not help but wonder if that was truly the power of a Demon King. When darkness finally fell and all of the orcs had been slain, their bodies scattered across the land, the two of them walked together toward the spirit blossom. Ernan immediately marveled at it, sensing that it was filled with pure mana, and she learned that this particular spirit blossom was called a hyacinth, one with water and ice attributes. Noticing the strange look in her eyes, Burzy told her not to covet it. He then added that if she could find more, he would let her have one, and this made Ernan extremely happy, as she promised that she would do everything she could. This made Burzy think to himself that humans only ever cheered up when they were given carrots. After some time, despite Ernan's best efforts until she was completely exhausted, they were unable to find a second patch of spirit blossoms. When they finally returned to the tower, Burzy reflected that at first, kidnapping the crown princess of the Hilderan kingdom had been a mistake, but now he was starting to think that she might be far more useful than he had originally imagined. Gordon then informed him that he had received a report from Granada, and when Burzy asked what it contained, Gordon said that the hero Hillen Cargill, along with 32 other heroes, had departed from the capital of Hilderan, but they were not heading toward Regressed. Instead, they were taking the classic path of heroes, forming a party, and growing stronger by completing villagers' quests as they traveled. Gordon showed him some of his plans regarding the hero's journey, and asked Burzy to read through them carefully, but Burzy immediately said that all of Gordon's plans were dismissed, shocking him. Burzy explained that this time, they would not send any monsters or interruptions to interfere with the hero's journey, because half-baked interference would only make them stronger. He then instructed Gordon to tell Granada to have the mercenaries join the heroes on their journey, and to help them gain the hero's trust. Gordon said that Burzy was not following any standard Demon King strategy this time, and added that with their current tower, they could not possibly stop the heroes, so he asked what they were supposed to do. Burzy simply smiled and told him not to worry, because he would reinforce the tower with the help of a dwarf. Gordon was completely shocked by this, and questioned whether the Demon King now intended to have a dwarf in their tower along with a human and a high elf. He said that if anyone ever saw such a sight, they would become a laughingstock. But when Burzy revealed his horns and released his power, Gordon had no choice but to fall silent. He then clarified that he was not saying that they would stop the heroes with a dwarf, but that what they truly needed were dwarven magical tools, and he asked Gordon to think about that carefully. Burzy added that the heroes had already grown used to the typical standards of a Demon King, so when they finally opened the door to the first floor expecting weak monsters, what would happen if dozens of cannons were waiting to greet them instead? When Gordon finally realized what Burzy was planning, he understood that the heroes would never be prepared for such a surprise. Even so, he said that Burzy's plan was still far from standard. But before he could finish speaking, Burzy suddenly vanished from in front of him, leaving Gordon with nothing to do but curse under his breath as he watched the Demon King fly away for yet another abduction. Meanwhile, in Wolfner, the underground city of the dwarves, a lone dwarf could be seen working inside his forge. This dwarf was the greatest dwarven blacksmith, Loger Friedrich, and at that very moment he had just been scheduled to be kidnapped by a rogue demon king.